Hello and welcome to another episode of the Beer Rep Chats With. Today I'm joined by Ash, the chairman of CAMRA. Ash, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So quick intro about yourself and your role as chairman. What does that involve?
Sure. So as I said, I'm chairman of CAMRA, which it's kind of everything and anything. It's one of those roles that really involves a lot. So I've been a member of CAMRA for going on about 10, 15 years now. I joined the board, so we have like an elected board. I joined that about 7 years ago. And then, about 6 months ago, I was elected to be our national chairman. And it involves, predominantly kind of being the spokesperson for the organisation. I kind of put myself out there doing things like this and trying to really kind of promote CAMRA and our campaigning and our membership to people. And then on the other side, it's a lot of administrative work. It's running a multi-million-pound business and having board meetings and going away and having kind of strategy days and that sort of thing. So it's a really exciting role, but it's as much as I want to make it as well. It's really interesting. There's no kind of job description. I just kind of find pies to stick my fingers in and get involved in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, CAMRA's all about real ale, but we all know that Cask can be a bit of a diva, needs a bit looking after, can get a bit grumpy sometimes when it's disturbed. So what's the whole, the tradition of UK people, beer drinkers, love Cask ale? I mean, why do we still love it after all these years?
I think because it's, as you said, it's so traditional. It is so kind of iconic, I think is the word I'd use. We have thousands and millions of tourists come to this country, and they always, I think top of their list of them visiting Buckingham Palace and some of the kind of the big sites is they want to go to a British pub and have a pint of Cask beer. It is the quintessential kind of British product. It's iconic, it's historic, and I think it is still one of the best formats for beer. You can have absolutely fantastic Cask beers. There's still a really exciting range of different beers being produced by brewers of all sizes in Cask. And for me personally, I'm going to do that kind of cliche of saying I like that it's not quite as cold and not quite as fizzy as some keg beers. I love keg beers as well, but that pint of Cask for me just goes down that a little bit easier.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've been drinking Cask for many, many years myself, and there's something different about it. It doesn't really. It's not carbonated. It's not over-carbonated. It's not too cold, and it's just so easy drinking. I mean, if you get a really nice fresh Cask, when you get the middle of the cask, and it's the freshest it is, and it's amazing. It's a lovely, and obviously you've got Johnny Garrett doing a massive campaign at the moment for getting Cask ale to be part of British heritage. And how's that all going? What have you been doing to help support that?
It's going really well. So I know it hit a threshold the other day that the government kind of responded and said yes, they're interested and they'd like some representation put to them to understand it. And CAMRA and Johnny and everyone else was still pushing for more signatures. Yes, we've had a bit of a response from the government, but what we want next is getting that debate in Parliament when I think it's 100,000 signatures you need or something like that. Like, if we can keep pushing and showing that there is a huge market out there and a huge interest in Cask beer, that would be fantastic. So we're really excited, and it's such a fantastic campaign.
Yeah, it's going really well, and obviously, like you said, need 100,000 signatures. So jump on board with the signatures. We're going to have the description down below and sign up, because it's a big cause and a worthy one as well. What do you think the biggest hurdles Cask ale is facing right now, and what hope do you have for its future?
I think the biggest thing, and what we've been engaging in a lot on at the minute, is access to market. At the moment, we know, and we've been working with SEBRA on this, that so many independent brewers are just not getting the access to market that they need. And this is why, as I said, SEBRA's launched their indie beer campaign. We know that drinkers want to try and drink independent beer, local beer, something that they can understand where it's come from and who's made it. But at the minute, consumers and drinkers aren't getting choice. They're given the illusion of choice. They go into a pub and they see X amount of pump clips and they're different brands, but they're not different breweries. They are often made in some mega factory somewhere, or they're owned by some global conglomerate that isn't giving them that choice. And when they're not given choice, they're not given quality as well. They're not given the ability to have what they want. What we don't want is a world where every pub is, identikit, and there are all these big chain pubs and there's about 5 beers to choose across the whole country. That would be terrible. we want a world where everyone can drink and choose exactly what they want, and whether that's keg or cask, it's stout, it's IPAs, whatever it is, there is choice and local independence as well.
Yeah, I mean, do you think there's like a big change going on with the whole pub culture? I mean, most pubs are owned by global brands or, locked into a contract with, say, for instance, Heineken, for example, where obviously they're providing them with all this equipment and in return that they stock their beers. Do you think there's a shift where you see a lot of micro pubs that are opening where they're 100% they're supporting UK independent breweries? Do you think there's a kind of a shift from people going to pubs more, then they're going more towards micro pubs where they can support independent breweries?
I think people want to. I think the real shame is there isn't a shift because there isn't that option as much as there should be, because the market is so dominated by these global players and these certain chains that aren't given the choice and things like that. I think what we're seeing is people starting to understand there's a problem. And I want CAMRA to be at the forefront of helping people to understand what that problem is and how we can change it. But I think, unfortunately, we're still in a world where, you can be in some of the major city centres and you might want to drink independent and go to, a micro pub. But you just can't. You can't have that choice because it is dominated in that market by a lack of choice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what kind of stops me from going to a pub, because you could have like 10 pubs in a town or city and you go into each one of them pubs and you'll see the same cask ale on, like you'll have Doom Bar or, London Pride. And no matter what one you go into, that's the only options you get. And that's the big problem, isn't it? Is where, independent breweries are not getting access to market. They're not being allowed to sell their beer in these pubs because of they're being owned by the big global players. And that's a big problem. And hence the downfall, I think, of the pubs at the moment, where so many are closing down because you can get the same beers in the same pubs. You have 10 pubs in the area, 5 are closed down because they've all got the same beer on. Who wants that?
Absolutely. Publicans aren't being allowed to survive and thrive by understanding and kind of giving their consumers and customers what they want. Most landlords and landladies know what the locals want. They might want to stock a local beer or do something interesting in their pub, and they're being told, no, you have to run it exactly as we tell you, and that'll be fine. And then we'll make that minimal margin profit and take that away. And the global players are happy with that because across their estate that adds up to a good number. But for the publican, it is not a living, and it's not good for the community who aren't being given exactly what they want.
Yeah, exactly. They want something niche, something different in their pubs to attract new customers. And if they're not getting that because they're not allowed to, then it's not helping them at all.
And it's not an argument against, as you said, Doom Bar and London Pride and things like that. My nan has become a convert to Doom Bar recently. She calls it Dom Bar, which I find hilarious. And I don't correct her. I'm just like, yeah, I'll go get you a pint of Dom Bar. But in the last couple of years, she's moved back to Burton-on-Trent, and that is the beer she always wants. She always has a little half a Dom Bar shandy is what she gets when we go out for a meal or something. And I want a world where my nan can go get her Doom Bar and she's very happy. But on the bar, there is also then, if you take Burton as the example, of a Bridge beer on next to it or something like that. And as well as your national brands or the pub over has choice. It's an ecosystem we want to see where everyone gets a share of the market.
Yeah, and not feel like they're being pushed out by the big globals. Yeah, 100%. So, CAMRA, you've expanded your network recently. How do you balance the tradition of cask with newer beer styles that are hitting the scene? Obviously that we're probably talking more about the keg style beers. How do you come up with a balance?
It's interesting because I think, as I said, I joined CAMRA about 10 odd years ago, and I never joined CAMRA as a purely cask organisation or light beer, real ale, whatever term people want to use. But you do get traditional members who say, that is what they're interested in. They just want to promote and campaign for cask beer, and that's totally fine. We've always said we're a broad church, and what's important actually is that we just achieve all our aims. And I've spoken to the founders. I used to see quite often Michael Hardman, one of the four who set up CAMRA back in 1971. And he's always said to me, he didn't start CAMRA to just do cask beer. What they understood was there was a danger in 1971 that the beer scene was going to become monotonous. It was just going to be kegged lagers from the continent that weren't, not a continent, but not very good, not very interesting, no particular kind of salesmanship or craft to making that beer, and just cheap, cheerful, and on the bar everywhere. That's what they wanted to get against. They wanted to make sure they appreciated that cask was being muscled out and they wanted to keep that quality and choice on the bar. And I think that's what we kind of use as our ethos now, which is quality and choice. So whether it is cask, or if it's craft, or if it's keg or key keg or cans, bottles, the important thing for us is that people have that ability to go to the pub and make a choice and have what they want. I want to see pubs that stock as much as possible, because that's how you get more people in and spending money. There is also venues where they go, you know what, we're focusing, we're only going to be cask, or we're only going to be bottles or something like that. And that's great. People go there because they seek those out. But for the most part, if you're out with a few friends or family, whatever it is, people are going to be drinking different things. You want to go to venues where people can have that choice and that ability. So what we're pushing against, I think, over the next few years is, again, this danger of, I think, choice being taken away, quality being taken away, because what we're seeing is big global brands coming and buying up craft breweries, mainly to get the pump clips and the marketing, and then say that, oh yes, people like Beavertown or whatever it is, and isn't it great? You get Beavertown in every pub now in the country, but it's not a quality. It's not a local independent beer that people think they're getting. And so what we're pushing against now is, hopefully people go and have a cask beer, but we also want to make sure people can go and have independent keg that is quality as well.
Yeah, definitely. You got the Craft Beer Festival, your CAMRA Beer Festival coming up in Birmingham soon. How important do you think festivals play a role in cask and obviously keg as well?
They're huge. Yeah, festivals are still kind of the thing that CAMRA does outside of kind of boots on the ground campaigning. That's our other kind of stick that we have to shake at the world. I don't think we're now in a world where people don't know what cask is. I think we're, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, when we were doing beer festivals, it was very much like, come discover cask. It's new. It was not new, but it's not that lager you've been drinking that, come and try something different. I think most people now know what cask is. They understand it. They appreciate it. But I think people are still apprehensive about cask. And you asked earlier kind of some of the threats against cask. Bad cask is the other big threat. I would rather cask wasn't served in pubs that can't sell it or won't look after it properly. Just don't have the cask. And I hate that, again, these tied models where they force them to have a really sad hand pull at the end of the bar with cobwebs on it, and you go in and you order it and it's horrible. That, people try that and that's it. They'll never have cask again because
exactly,
they realised it was so badly looked after. So I think festivals are still really important for demonstrating good quality cask and saying, actually, it's served right, it's cellared right, then you can get a good product. And then the other thing is, I think what they're really good for, going back to that access to market thing, is, yes, if we're saying the market is dominated and pubs are unfortunately not allowed to sell all these wonderful beer, small independent breweries across the UK, festivals can. And that's what's great. You can go to a festival. I discovered one of my favourite beers is some Colchester Brewery, I think, and they do a Brazilian coffee porter or something like that. Absolutely fantastic. I've never seen it on any pub ever, because I don't live near Colchester, or I hope they get into the local pubs. And frankly, as I said, access to market is a problem. But I had it at a beer festival. It was an amazing beer. I kept going back and having more of it. And that was my opportunity to try something new and independent and really enjoy it. So I think festivals are super important for showcasing and allowing breweries to get out there. They win the awards, but they might get beer at the festival, or if it goes through our Champion Beer of Britain judging and goes on to win awards. That can again be a lifeline and a really good marketing tool for these breweries. They get to say, the little thing on the hand pull, on the bump clip that says we've won CAMRA awards. So I think it's really good for showcasing independent brewers as well.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's brilliant. What would you say? Is your most favourite brewery that's going to be at the Great British Beer Festival this year in Birmingham?
I'm going to be incredibly biased, and I'm going to say it's Attic Brewery, which is from Birmingham. I used to live 2 streets away from Attic. Having that at the end, basically the end of my road, was fantastic. Finish work, go down and have a couple of beers in their brewery tap. And I know they're really excited. They're really keen. They got in touch with me. They got in touch with the festival and said, yes, we really want to get involved. We want to showcase Birmingham. So they're not only wanting to sell their beers, but I know when I was speaking to Catherine from there, she was saying they want to put Birmingham on the map. Now we're moving the Great British Beer Festival to Birmingham, which I think is a fantastic opportunity, and definitely not just because it's going to be really easy for me to get to. Yeah, this is the opportunity we say, Birmingham has a reputation, not helped by the binge strikes now at the minute, of being a bit of a downtrodden city. of having its issues, of people doing the accent when anyone mentions Birmingham. I want people to understand that actually it's a really exciting city with great beer, great food, lots of stuff to do. You can go and have a day out once you've gone to GBF, just get a train 10 minutes back into the city centre. And I'm really happy that Attic are pushing that as well and flying the flag for Birmingham. The bad thing was Attic and the others did so well that it put the house prices up quite a lot in that area. It's now a really kind of desirable place to live in Birmingham. So I had to move away to be able to afford to buy a house.
Exactly. It's been proven that wherever there's a brewery set up, it improves, creates more jobs. House prices do go up. So it's beneficial for the government to support independent breweries.
That's a really, really good point, actually, about the jobs and the economy. And this is what we've been pushing really hard, which is, Labour ran on a manifesto of they wanted to do growth. And our argument is then, well, why are you trying to punish pubs? So we know these national insurance contributions going up, which are hitting small employers much harder than big employers. And, and the duty, we've got our asks on that, or they promised in their manifesto they were going to look at business rates of pubs. And we're still not seeing that. And we're pushing going, well, when is this going to happen? And this, this access to market review, and making sure that, don't just pay lip service, do a proper review. There is a problem. You need to recognize that, because I think someone did a bit of research recently, and they said, kind of pint for pint, small brewers employ more people than big brewers, because these big brewers, these big massive factories where it's all push of a button and then it's just massive machines that basically make the beer. There's not a lot of people involved in those. Whereas, Attic and the like, it is a team of people crafting that beer together, which is really important. So they're employing more people per pint than these big brewers.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously bar staff and their tap rooms as well, if they have a tap room. Just a quick one on the reasoning why you decided to move the Great British Beer Festival from London to Birmingham this year. What was the main reasoning behind that? So
the main reason we had we weren't able to hold it in 2024. Fortunately, so Olympia, the venue we've traditionally used for a number of years, they've had a lot of extensive work being done there. They're refurbishing it. They're wanting to, I think, pivot it to be a much more their own sort of space. I think they're putting in their own hospitality stuff. I've seen pictures of rooftop bars and stuff they're putting in there. So a lot of work, a lot of building work. I think, unfortunately, last year it got to the point during negotiations where they couldn't guarantee, I think, the sort of size and space we needed to do a good job. And it was changing each week. And they'd say, no, now it's going to be this. Now you're going to have that. No, you're not going to have that bit of the hall and things like that. And we just couldn't, in good faith, take the risk of having our festival there and potentially the risks of it changing and not being what we wanted to be. But that was also a really good opportunity, because the trouble is, when we cancelled it, people kept saying, oh, well, move it here, move it there, which is great, but actually people don't maybe appreciate how hard it is to plan one of the UK's biggest beer festivals. You can't just pick it up and go, great, let's have it on the other side of the country in 3 weeks' time instead. The army of volunteers that we have involved, how do you get the accommodation for people? Because we put hundreds of people up in student digs across London during it normally. But that meant that, rather than always just focus on how we're doing the next one, we had a year where we go, great, let's have a think about what GBBF is and what do we want to achieve with it. And so we took the time out, had a big think, and we found the opportunity really to reinvent GBBF. So it's not going to be as big. The NEC space just isn't as big as Olympia is. So there is going to be a reduction in the beers. But what we're hoping to be is much more focused. So it's still going to be a really exciting festival. We're still going to have, lots of different beers and around the country and really showcase all those brilliant brewers. But we also want it to be a much more interactive festival and people to not just drink beers, but come away learning things, getting involved. We're going to have much more of our learning discovery platform there. That's really exciting. And then I think just the fact that we get to move it somewhere, as much as when we first announced it, all the Londoners on Facebook said, oh, we're not coming to Birmingham, it's too far. And they didn't really appreciate all those people that have been coming to London all these years and making the trek. Well, they couldn't possibly leave London, obviously. But obviously, once that had died down, the amount of people who've said, oh, you know what, Birmingham's a lot easier to get to from Leeds or York or wherever it might be, because it's on the main train line. And they're saying, you know what, I can make a day out of it. So we're hoping for a new audience as well. I think we'll get plenty of the people from London who still, it's an hour and a half train straight into the NEC. It's not the end of the world. So I think most of them will still come. But I'm hoping we'll get a new exciting audience of people who maybe felt that getting down to London was a bit too much.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not far from London at all. It's an hour and a half, like you said. And it's more accessible for the rest of the country to get to Birmingham from further up north, like you say. CAMRA membership is quite big. How many members do you have now? Is it roughly 170,000?
40-ish thousand, or something like that, yeah.
So how do you keep it fresh and modern and appealing to someone, who's just discovered hazy pals and, doesn't even know what a hand pour is yet? How do you keep it?
Well, yeah, I think what we're trying to do is position ourselves as that friendly face that can help you discover more and learn more and get involved. I joined CAMRA because a mate's dad, I was at university, and a mate's dad said, come out with me and I'll show you what proper beer is like. And I discovered Cask beer, and I was like, oh, this is what I've been looking for this entire time. I've been struggling to drink Foster's for £1.20 or whatever in the student union. Actually, what I really wanted was it was Enville ale. It was fantastic. I loved it, and I joined, and then I did that, and then a couple of months later, I went to Burton Beer Festival and joined CAMRA at that. I thought, you know what, these are the chaps and ladies who seem to get it. And I frankly just wanted to give them a bit of money and hope they did all the good work they did. And then for a few years, I was a little bit scared of getting involved. I kept getting emails saying, oh, come along to a branch meeting and get involved. And I thought it was going to be a room full of proper beer experts. And here was me kind of in my early 20s, just knew that I liked drinking beer and going to pubs. And I thought, no, this isn't for me. And it took a little while to go, and then actually discovered, in the nicest possible way, it is just like-minded people. They're people who, who love beer. You get a whole range of people. You get people who are absolute experts, and I will never claim to be. I've been on plenty of brewery tours, but unfortunately, it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. What I like about beer is the glass and putting it to my mouth. That's the side of beer I most enjoy. But we have people, they know all about the science of it, and they can talk about the millions of parts of yeast and what makes this and that and all that sort of thing. You've got people who are pub experts, and they can tell you all about the planning regulations, and they're really passionate about changing legislation to support pubs and everything in between. And probably a wide range of people who are just passionate beer drinkers and pub goers and want to learn a bit more of that. And so, yeah, I think what we're trying to do is position ourselves as that organisation you can go to learn more, to get involved more. There's always a fight. We talked earlier about access to market. The other one is just talk about planning legislation, which is not great in some parts of the country still. In Wales, the planning legislation is not as strong as it is in England, and actually they're losing so many more pubs. Or you've got, for example, in Northern Ireland, where the surrender principle means that actually opening a new venue is so incredibly hard. It's a closed shop. So there is always something somewhere in the country to fight about, and that's what we're positioning ourselves as the people that will give you the time, the resource to do it. And, with our learn and discovery platforms and all the kind of the passionate volunteers we've got, that we're also the organisation that if you just want to learn more, you can come and get involved and then hopefully, make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. If CAMRA had a Tinder profile, would Gen Z swipe to the right? Is it attractive enough to younger drinkers? Or do we have to wait for them to grow another 10 years?
I'm going to be brutally honest and say no, they would not swipe right. And I don't think, as you said, you wait a bit. I don't think that's the biggest problem in the world. One of the questions I always get as being a younger member of CAMRA is, how do we get young members? How do we get these 18 to 20-year-olds that are all doing X and Y and Z? And I don't think actually getting 18, 25-year-olds is a silver bullet. When CAMRA started, so our membership was in their 20s and 30s. It was people my sort of age who were passionate, and then they have grown up with CAMRA. So the members we still have are, 60s and 70s years old is because they joined when they were 25. But the world has changed. I think it's really hard to get young people to be passionate about an organisation like CAMRA, because what we really focus on is locality and community. People love the pub because it's their local. And when you are in your 20s, unfortunately, the way the world is now, you don't really get to set roots. People, renting and they have to move house every 12 months. They don't have a job that's maybe as secure, so they're changing job or they've not settled their career yet. So just the way their life works isn't conducive with becoming part of an organisation that is, I want to campaign for pubs in Birmingham city centre, because they might not live in Birmingham city centre in 12 months' time, so they're not going to get involved in that. And that's just something we have to accept. We can't change that world. So I don't think we're going to get a huge amount of that. And I think as well, the way CAMRA is, we're probably not the organisation you want to join when you're in your 20s. We do have, thousands of members who are under 30 years old, and it's fantastic. We've got some really good young members, which hopefully doesn't come across as patronising, because I don't want them to feel they're a separate part of the organisation, but, they are counted as, 18 to 30, you're a young member. And they just had a big get-together in Blackpool. Young members from all around the country came up to Blackpool, and they had a big day out, and I know they do other stuff around the country. But I think that's more the exception than the rule. Most of our membership and where we're targeting is people when they get into their 30s and 40s, maybe have settled down, bought their first house, hopefully, if they can afford it in this economy. Careers are settled. Maybe they've had children who are starting to get a little bit older, so they've got some spare time. And frankly, they've got a little bit spare money to get involved in doing this sort of organisation. Buying pints isn't free. We support pubs by going and buying pints when we have our meetings. So, that is the sort of cohort where people say, you know what, I want something to do with my Tuesday evenings, my Wednesday evenings, and then get out and get involved. So 30s to 40s, I think, is the first cohort we're aiming for. And then actually, there's another cohort of people who are kind of 50, 60, 70 years old who are either their careers are very, very settled or they're thinking about retirement. And they want to use the experience they've had over their careers and how do they give back. We have tons of people, who've had really high up jobs. It always surprises me. And then I think there's another cohort right at the end, which I think for a few years we were a little bit ashamed about, or people tried to shame us, where they said, oh, it's just an old man's drinking club. They just get together and have a beer and it's just old men. And I think, yes, and frankly, I'm not ashamed of that. I'm actually really proud that CAMRA as an organisation is there for people who, in the later years of their life and maybe, they've retired, so they don't have work friends as much anymore, or unfortunately maybe a spouse has passed away, or their friends, sort of drift away, or unfortunately passed on. And CAMRA provides that space for them.
It becomes like a community for them people, who are retired and decide I want a hobby still, enjoy drinking beer, and it gets them out of the house and interacting with people still. Becomes a community, which is great. In regards to like the younger people, you said obviously they're not staying in one place for too long, so they're not really going to be getting involved with supporting local pubs, etc. Could we kind of get them to be more focused on supporting independent breweries as a whole, and indie beer as a whole, instead of just a certain area?
I think so. I think where we come in is we're probably pushing to say, well, actually, the pub is still a place to socialise. I think there is. So my wife's siblings range from about 18 through to 30. One's just in her first year finishing at university, and they're not pub goers. And I think it's because they don't see the pub as a place for them. I think CAMRA's role is to say, well, actually, the pub is a place for all people, all ages, and you can go and socialise in there. And the weird and wonderful beers that you can get, we can push to get more access to market for good quality local beers. Hopefully we can get them excited and say, yeah, I want to go try some different beers and hang out in the pub and socialise that way. So that hopefully, in 10, 15 years' time, when they've been drinking all this beer and they go, oh, I'm going to join CAMRA because it's fantastic, and they've been pushing this a long time. And I've seen the awards on the wall at the pub, and I've seen them pushing these independent breweries and giving them awards on their pump clips and things like that. CAMRA clearly is the organisation for me. But the other one is we've really got to push. It's the price, it's the cost. I think young people, of every generation, when in your 20s and stuff like that, you have to think about where you're spending the money, as people of all ages do, but particularly when you're younger, your pounds don't stretch as far. So you've got to think about that. And so, this is where our campaigning comes in to say, well, actually, that careful balance of how do we make sure that beer is affordable, but also that publicans and brewers are making enough from it to be able to live and find that balance. I get why beer is more expensive, and no one in CAMRA is trying to argue that brewers shouldn't be able to make a living or publicans shouldn't be able to make a living, but there is the whole, the duty, your business rates, as we talked about, national insurance contribution, all these different other factors that then add on top of just the price of making the beer and making a profit, that are making pints unaffordable. And so, younger people are just not seeing that as a viable option.
So, for folks that, are watching who haven't joined CAMRA yet, give us your best Dragon's Den pitch and tell explain to them why they should be joining CAMRA.
I think people should be joining CAMRA if you are anywhere from passionate to just interested in pubs and breweries and how this is all made and how we support them. Because, as I said, it is a massive broad church, 140,000 like-minded people who have all these different passions. Not everyone shares all the same passions, but there is something for everyone. Cider, perry, real ale, pubs, clubs, all this sort of thing. And as an organisation, it is the best opportunity to get more involved in that. I've always myself been a pub goer, but I'm now much more, my social life is around CAMRA. I've got friends that I would have never have met otherwise being involved in CAMRA. It gives me opportunity to go around the whole country. Getting involved, being a volunteer at every level means you can do pub judging for awards or beer judging for awards, and you get all these weird and wonderful places. I've been to all four corners of the country. I've been to wonderful pubs around the country that I would never have had an opportunity to get to otherwise, or even have thought of going to. And I think it's something that once you're involved in, it's an organisation you're in for life. Like, these are people I'm going to know for the rest of my life. These are publicans I've met and brewers I've met that I'm going to know for the rest of my life. I can run into them on the other side of the country, and they'll go, "Oh, hey, how are things?" It's such a big social network and a learning opportunity and a campaigning opportunity that it's incredibly exciting, and it is as well. You get what you put into it. It's an opportunity that you can just pay your subs and hope someone else does some campaigning, and we've got plenty of members who do that, and it's great because that is what bankrolls all the other work. But for the people who get involved, we will never stop people trying to get involved. We love it. It's the only organisation where, frankly, I was given the ability to almost run a communications kind of committee and department of a business in my 20s, which has been fantastic for my career. But I've been able to put that on my CV, and no other business gives you that. And he says, "Oh yeah, great. What are your ideas for how we contact 140,000 people? We'd love you to take a project and lead that." Like, it is, we're an open book, we're an open organisation. We happily let people grab whatever they want and really get involved in the organisation, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So any final words to our watchers, listeners, about CAMRA? Anything you want to add on to what we've been talking about today?
And join now, because the subs are going up in July, so you're never going to get a better price than if you join today. If it's something that's been on your mind, I really want people to go on the website, have a look. We've got a database of every pub in the country. We've got all our educational materials on there. We've got campaigning tools. Just go on the website, have a look. And if it's the organisation that you think that's something for them, then yeah, just to join and get involved. And if people are members but have been apprehensive, as I was, to get involved, because they think, it's a bit of a closed shop, I'm not quite part of that team, just go along to the local meeting and get involved. The amount of people I've met who said, they spent years not going because they thought CAMRA was one thing, went to a local meeting, were welcomed with kind of open arms, and now they're running the local beer festival. It's so many people. So yeah, join up, get involved, because we want to help utilise all these people. We're 140,000 members so far, but if another 5,000 passionate beer lovers joined and became members and volunteers, that's going to strengthen us so much more. We'll put all our power behind you to go and campaign to make a difference.
Brilliant. Ash, it's been absolutely amazing to talk to you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No worries. Our next episode, we'll be chatting with Danny from Beak. Had to be rescheduled. It was supposed to be this week, but is now next week. Until then, we'll catch you then. Catch you later. Bye-bye.